I would have loved to see it. So, following that event, and the police did very little. So there was an event, I believe, the 15th after that, where once again the police did very little, and there was 4 horrific acts of violence. And then I was up to the 5th, and then the 15th. Now there was the Ann Coulter event that didn't go on, where the police actually got their act together and was fairly peaceful. And then we had the event in Portland last week, where, again, the police actually did their job. So I know you're returning to Berkeley soon.
I am.
I'm curious how you feel about how, now that police officers, and there's all these free speech events and counter-protests throughout the country, now that police kind of have a code to go by, do you feel that your next event will be a bit more peaceful? And do you feel that you have sort of started this whole free speech movement? Because I didn't care very much until I took an interest in you at the beginning of the year, and now I feel as my obligation to go to these events to exist on the side of free speech and common sense. And also, when are you returning back to Berkeley?
Well, thank you for that. You're not alone. Many people feel as you do. And lots of the people who were attacked by Antifa, by these violent leftist thugs in UC Berkeley, were not fans of mine. They just wanted to hear what I had to say. They just wanted to show up and listen to somebody that they'd heard, interesting things about. There was one of the really big positive changes that I think that I am making to America. I'm really happy about is this: UC Davis, UW Seattle, and UC Berkeley. The police were instructed basically to stand down and let people, let these armed, pre-planned, well-funded, well-organized, violent leftist gangs of smash stuff up. And they were basically told to do that. Now at UC Berkeley, there were people there who weren't necessarily Milo fans, but they were just there to hear what the guy had to say, which is what they all told reporters. And they were being pepper sprayed in the face. $100,000 worth of damage was done to UC Berkeley itself, and $500,000 worth of damage was done to downtown Berkeley, which never gets reported on. That's because universities, the local mayoralties, and police forces work together to determine the police approach to these events. And from the university's point of view, what they want to do is to discourage conservative speakers from coming by making it as terrifying and as expensive as possible. Well, the problem is that is in direct violation of their legal obligation to provide a safe platform for speakers regardless of political persuasion. UC Berkeley receives, I think it's $360 million annually in federal funding, and they are required by law to be politically agnostic when it comes to providing spaces for speakers when students want to hear them. I think what happened with me, at the last tour...
I'm going to ask you to hold what happened until we get across this break. I'm out of time. It's Talk Radio, 790 KBC. That's us, Midday Live. Dr. Mike Catherine. It's Talk Radio 790 KBC. The number is 800-222-5222. And our guest is Milo Yiannopoulos. Milo, again, we appreciate you being here with us.
Well, thank you so much.
Being open, honest, and thorough in your openness with our callers. And you were talking about telling me a story before we had to go out to commercial break about what had happened to you on your tour. I believe you met your college tour.
Yes, and I've forgotten what the story was.
You've forgotten it? Oh, my goodness.
Let me ask you a quick question.
It was a good one. What were we going to talk about?
You were talking about how people...
I remember. No, I was talking about how I was saving America. I remember now.
Yes.
The police chiefs, and I have no reason to suppose that there's any causal connection or any reason why this might be so, but the police chiefs at UC Davis, UW Seattle, and UC Berkeley, at the time when the police were told to stay away and just let the protesters go wild, were all female police chiefs, and they were all very closely associated with the university administrators. And I'm guessing what happened is some kind of sisterhood thing where it's like, let's just make it as impossible as we can for this guy who hates feminism and all the rest of it. But ordinary people got hurt. And what I've noticed since, and I guess I am the crucible in which these little explosions start. And now there's this huge, a brush fire has turned into a galactic conflagration, between these groups of agitators on both sides, really. But what I have noticed since is that the policing strategies have changed, and that's a very positive development, because what it means is universities are realizing that they have to uphold their commitment to allow anyone to speak that if students want them to speak. Now, I'm not what. It's obvious within, having spent a second in my company that I'm not what any of the names the media calls me, right? But even if I were, what's the guy's name? Richard Spencer, the white supremacist guy, right? Even if I were him, they're still obliged to provide him a platform if students want to hear from him. Now, as it happens, I'm just a sassy gay guy who likes to crack black whatever jokes and fat jokes and talk about how I don't like the progressive left. But such is the fury from the left, because they've never really seen anyone like me before, who's fearless and who's actually prepared to park my pink tanks on their lawn and beat them where they live.
Has anything you've said ever created hate, do you think? Has it generated actual behavior? And let me sort of...
No, it's the opposite.
Well, hold on a second. And parenthetically, along those same lines, have you ever said anything you regretted?
Well, yeah, so I'll do in two parts. Has anything I've ever said created hate? I think the opposite. The reason the left hates laughter because it can't control it. You can't. Authoritarians hate laughter because you can't control what people laugh at, what they find funny. The reason the left likes to clamp down on jokes, and this is why you get Seinfeld, Chris Rock, all the rest of it saying they won't play college campuses because the kids are too sensitive these days. The reason they want to clamp down on jokes is they want to suggest that words can be harmful, can be hurtful. When, like telling jokes about black people, they're all the best jokes. And people who's like Sarah Silverman, they used to be funny before they contracted feminism and became awful. I'm one of the only people, I think, in American public life who is unafraid to tell jokes about anyone and anything. And what the left misunderstands about humor is that it brings people together. It doesn't drive them apart. What are pickup lines? They're jokes designed to ease people into communication with into conversational congress with one another. Humor binds us. It doesn't drive us apart. And by constantly calling people sexist and racist and homophobic and transphobic for cracking jokes, you are achieving nothing but driving people apart. And as for have I ever said anything I regretted? Well, I think probably many of your listeners will remember in February, I had a little professional hiccup when a tape surfaced of me saying things that I did not mean. So I, in my youth, was a victim of something very unpleasant, and I figured that gave me the right to crack jokes about it, because humor is how I
this is sexual abuse comments,
right? And humor is how I get through. I think humor is how many of us get through all the terrible things in life.
So you're adjusting those things.
So I was addressing those things in a lighthearted and flippant way on a 4-hour 3 a.m. live stream. One of those booze fueled chat fests where things
you regret saying that.
Ideas tumble out of your mouth half formed. And I said, and I made one remark that I did not mean, and I regretted, and I apologize for that. It's the only apology I ever intend to make in my entire career, because it's the only time I think I've ever been wrong. But for sure, and I'm humble enough to acknowledge when I think I have misspoken or acted wrongly. I just don't do it that often.
You said earlier that you were oblivious to maybe negative feedback or the way that certain people, certain tropes would behave. But you clearly have very thick skin, and you're willing to be courageous, at least intellectually. But as a person, does it ever really hurt your feelings to go home and see the negative tweets, the negative write-ups, the blogs, whatever? I mean, it has to get at you somewhat, right?
I mean, maybe once every millennia, I might wake up in a bad mood and just be, and just see. One of the things I guess that makes me upset is, as I mentioned earlier, I have love in my life. He's black and when people on the internet are calling me, a white supremacist and a Nazi and all the rest of it, I look over at the love of my life, and I just think, every once in a while it gets to you, and you just think, if only they knew. And because I'm not the kind of person that wants to cynically abuse their private relationship for professional reasons, it's not like I can I'm not just going to post a picture of a couple of us and expose him to danger and to whatever. So sometimes I just have to suck that stuff up, and I can't respond, for his sake. I once in a while, I guess, but to be perfectly honest with you, I really don't care that much about mean words from people who don't take the time to actually listen to me. Because my experience is that the people who hate me, the people who are probably complaining right now to you for daring to have me on the show, and have probably been complaining for some time and will continue to complain afterwards. I doubt whether many of those people have actually ever read any of my columns. I doubt whether many of those people have actually watched my college talks, because if they had, I think they would appreciate the same level of nuance and intelligence that I hope that I've exhibited in this interview.
That is the stuff that drives me insane, which is what I was talking about with the trust me, I'm lying. They believe the rhetoric of the response, and then the response gets reported as fact as opposed to going to the primary But I got so many calls for you, Milo. I want to get to some of them. Dennis, go ahead.
No, we must.
Dennis, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, Milo.
Hi.
Before I get to my point, just a very quick quote attributable to Winston Churchill. If you're young and you're not a liberal, you have no heart. And if you're older and you're not a conservative, you have no mind.
Well, I guess I was born age 90. I think there's some there's clearly from the life trajectory of people some truth to that, because people begin with very idealized notions about, peace, love, and understanding and being wonderful to each other, and then they have mortgages to pay and kids to raise. And this is the problem I have with libertarianism. It's, libertarianism sounds fine in principle, but in practice, I don't want my daughter to be a stripper, so it might be quite nice to disincentivize that, in some way. So I don't know. I don't think I followed the conventional political trajectory that many people do. All I want to do is in my college talks, make it okay for other people who have unconventional paths through their political discovery and development, able to express themselves on campuses. And currently, college Republicans, YAL and YAF and all these other organizations on campus who represent the growing, timid but increasingly confident conservative minorities, on campuses. I want them to be able to speak their own truths and express their own opinions as fearlessly and as and with as much pride and as much enthusiasm and as much excitement and as much spectacle as people with left-wing opinions can. And that's really my only goal.
And let me throw the libertarian point of view into the mix here and defend their position, which is there are other ways to disincentivize certain kinds of behaviors without the government doing it. Just saying. Mel, go ahead.
Oh, hey, hi Milo, hi Mike.
How are you doing?
What up,
Dr. Drew?
Hey.
Yeah, Milo, I just want to get your opinion on something. I was really disappointed this year. Christopher Street West decided to make the Gay Pride Parade a big resist protest march. And yeah, they publicized it. And I thought, oh, well, maybe it's mixed with all the, the joy of a parade. I go walk up the street on the Santa Monica Boulevard. The streets were empty. This usually invites families to engage them and, all things about, gay people, whether, extreme or not, whatever. Anyway, I was extremely disappointed. It totally got hijacked. Maxine Pelosi and Adam Schiff were there speaking, and it was just so mean-spirited, and I think it just sucked the joy out of it all.
There's an ugliness about it, isn't there?
Your opinion.
Yeah,
Thanks a lot, guys. Love you, Milo.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Well, listen, I think that gay pride, rather, well, they're indistinguishable. If you actually look at the parades these days, gay pride is an anachronism. I don't think it performs much of a function any longer. I don't think there's any reason for it. Really, it's a very corporatized, vodka and lube sponsored way for people to waste their weekend, getting high and getting off with each other. I don't think it really accomplishes anything in a civil rights sense. But this is a wider point. Intersectionality, which is one of these words that the left has come up with to describe the fact that some people's lives are terrible for multiple reasons. Is a sort of buzzword, and you'll sometimes hear it. What it basically means is that these protest groups, whether it is feminism or the LGBT movement or Black Lives Matter, whatever, they've basically run out of stuff to complain about. So they're all teaming up. And they all now show up to the same stuff together to protest the sort of nebulous, artificial constructs of patriarchy, white supremacy, capitalism. All of these, they don't actually have very much to say anymore. And I think that gay pride. There's no reason why gay pride should be particularly political, especially when.
It's history. But you're back to talking about history, of course.
Of course, but times have moved on, and you can't stay in history forever.
Oh, you were the one that half an hour ago said if you don't study your history.
But what I was talking about was the left hijacking the gay rights movement. Okay. Because what I'm saying is, times have moved on from the and it's perfectly reasonable. I would have agreed with you. 50 years ago that the Republicans were the problem, right? That the conservatives were the problem for sure. But they're not anymore. The problem isn't really Democrats or Republicans, because people don't care if you're gay these days. It's quite hard to go out onto the street and find somebody who really, really, really cares about this stuff. The problem is Islam. The problem is radical Islam. And there is only one side of the political divide that is prepared to speak openly and honestly about it. And it's not even all of them, not even all Republicans. Paul Ryan won't do it. It's Trump, and it is some of the Trump supporting media. It is me, and it is a small faction of this new, trolly, mischievous, dissident, populist, nationalist right who just we just find it mind-boggling that the left, on the one hand, will speak about tolerance and inclusion and fairness and all the rest of it, and on the other hand, support a candidate who's funded by a country that wants to see us hurled off roofs and goodness what else. There's so much hypocrisy and so much of the gay community being taken for granted by the left, and it just makes me despair for my fellow homosexuals when they see things like the Orlando nightclub massacre happen, and they still don't get the message. And you see this peace, love, understanding. I mean, the Ariana Grande concert, for instance, happened in my home country, in Manchester, and I challenged her on Facebook to condemn radical Islam. And I don't want to make any anti-Muslim statements on it. It's not about getting at anybody in particular, but say, radical Islamic terror is a I said to her in a number of statements that were very widely reported, you must condemn this ideology. This is a moment for culture, which is so much more powerful than politics, for a pop star to condemn a movement which is sucking in new converts. I mean, Britain, the UK, Manchester, where this stuff happened. The UK sends more fighters to ISIS than any country except Belgium, where they also have an Islamic problem. Ariana Grande making a statement about the evils of radical Islamic terror could save millions of lives, but she won't do it, and she won't do it because the left continually panders to the worst forms of Islam, and to see the gay community time and time again drop back on, fall back onto this love wins. Let's change our Twitter avatars to rainbow flags. Let's all just blah blah blah.
Let's get you kicked off Twitter.
Yeah, get Milo Yiannopoulos kicked off Twitter. The real enemy is that orange clown in the White House. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, but 50 people were killed in that nightclub in Orlando at the Pulse nightclub, and one gay guy showed up to point the finger at who was really responsible, and it was me. And I went down there and I gave a speech, and I said, look, you've got to stop listening to these people who are lying to you. You've got to start naming the problem, and you've got to start protecting your own, and the gay people have got to start waking up. And that speech has been viewed, I think, across various platforms in various ways about 10 million times now. And I would like to think that it had a big impact on the way that the election went. And my belief is that the stranglehold that progressives have had up until now on many of these minorities, whether it's, I say minorities, women too, women, blacks, gays, it's my hope that one of the effects of the Donald Trump presidency, which has basically blown apart any sensible definition of Republican, Democrat, left, right. Nobody has any idea what any of these words mean anymore. Perhaps one of the effects of that is that people will start voting with reason, logic, and fact instead of tribally, and will start actually listening to, actually start voting with their heads instead of with their body parts and their skin color. That's my dream for America. America was founded on ideals. It was America was founded not on the basis of skin color, sexuality, and gender, but America was founded on freedom, on the idea that you should be able to do, be, and say anything. And from my point of view, as a free speech activist, the greatest threat to that in America today is the progressive left, and that is where you see this. They are the ones responsible for the hijacking of gay pride. They are the ones responsible for the papering over of who is responsible for terrorist atrocities. They are the ones responsible for all manner of things that make us less safe and that drive us further apart.
We got to wrap this up, my friend. I appreciate you spending time with us. I'm just going to add one sort of aphorism to your little disclaimer there, which is, wouldn't you also agree the level playing field, though, is also an important feature of the American idea?
I wish there was one.
Not equal in all respects, but equal opportunity under the law.
I believe in equality of opportunity, not equality of outcome.
Yeah.
And that's why I don't have a problem with just to give you a very, very fast, quick example.
Very fast, because I can break and come back to you if you want to hang.
Fine, let's do that.
All right, so break. Talk Radio 790 KBC.